Eastbound and down. That's the theme of today's show here at HP Race Development. I'm in the porting room, and today we're on the grind. I got my trusty cup of coffee. Jason Anderson rolls another race win, that is. He maybe got a little crunk after last weekend's race, his birthday on Friday, but he managed to come out on top on this weekend's race. We had Eli Tomac falling from grace, or did he just grace the field with one bad start? We're going to have to see as this series continues on if his great fortune of starts continues or if he kind of goes back to the old Eli of the past with inconsistent starts. Same old crash, different Stewart. That was a bummer for Malcolm. We thought he was riding really, really well. That was the best ride of him for the season so far, and he managed to just make a little mistake and throw it all away. And the KTM group, did they figure something out in just 1 week's time? Or maybe the bike was never broken. We had KTM group motorcycles, KTM Husky Gas, second, third, fourth, fifth, skip six, Eli got sixth, and seventh place out there on the track. That's a heck of a lot of bikes inside the top 10 for one manufacturer. And the curse of Carmichael, it continues. The Curse of Carmichael has continued on at Factory Honda 450 program. They have not won a Premier Class championship since Carmichael left them in Monster Energy Supercross racing. I think Ken Roczen's out. He's ready for a change. And unfortunately, Chase Sexton was left changing his britches out there after a brutal get-off. Thoughts and prayers to Chase. I hope he's okay. That must have been a really painful crash, and it could have been much worse. Jason Anderson just barely missed him. That sums it up for the 450 class. I'm going to bring my great friend on the show, Austin Miller. He's a multi-time Baja champion. He's a multi-time amateur national champion. He's one of the best test riders I've ever worked with. And we're going to get technical on today's show a little bit about what we see in the bikes, what we see in the technique of the riders, and what you guys can do to apply that to your racing. Let's get it on the grind. What's up, Austin? Welcome to the show. We had a little bit of technical difficulties today. What was my coffee mug full of coffee has turned to a little bit more of an adult beverage. It's now nighttime. We've got a little bit of something going on here. So let's get to the show, man. How are you? Cheers.
Hey, I'm good. Glad to be on.
Awesome. So we had an awesome night of racing. The theme of my show today, I did an introduction, is eastbound and down. Let's start off with the 450 class. The topics that I came up with were the following. We had Jason Anderson roll the competition again. We had KTM group resurging. Maybe they fixed the bike, or maybe the riders had a change of mentality. We're not really sure. I'm not sure they could have fixed it in 1 week. We had Eli Tomac. Has he fallen from grace, or did he grace the field with just one bad start? The next topic I had was the Curse of Carmichael continues at Factory Honda 450 Racing. And last but not least, we had blanking on it. Malcolm, I like this little topic here. It's same old crash, different Stewart, which I think is a pretty cool play on words because a steward is like a chauffeur at times. So I kind of like that one.
Yeah, so it's a pretty exciting weekend. Yeah, I mean, big things that come to mind. Definitely Sexton all the way to the end of the race, and then next thing you know, he's on his back and doesn't know where he's at. Kind of gave me a flashback of James Stewart's crash in Daytona when he was trying to get on the bike and couldn't get his leg over the bike, and they still let him on, but time to change a little bit.
Yeah, so Sexton is like the new James Stewart, and it's very unfortunate because he's so pretty to watch ride, even prettier than Stewart was. You would think there's no way this guy can crash, and then he goes out and has big crashes, like big ones. So hopefully he's okay. He definitely hit the ground very hard. I mean, do you think we see him next week?
I think he'll be back next week. I'm sure they'll do the whole concussion protocol and kind of run him through all that stuff. But he was up and walking, and he'll be back for Arlington for sure.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what I like on this show, which is the technical side of things. You're a very good rider. For those who don't know, Austin is a multi-time Baja 1000 participant. You've won, I think, 2 years of the overalls and the 1,000 in the limited pro class, and you guys have placed. What was your best finish in the open pro class? Like second or third 1 year?
Yeah, we finished third.
Yeah, third in the open pro class. You're an amateur national champion. You've got a long history of racing and riding. Loretta's a couple years ago, unfortunately, ended with an early week crash, but you had great speed that day. I think we could have maybe come around with the top 5. So you're just a jack of all trades when it comes to dirt bikes. What are you noticing with the bikes out there? Kind of walk me through each brand and each bike. What would you be the takeaways of each one?
All right, let's start. I guess let's throw the Yamaha out there. So bike setup on that looks a little different than traditionally. Tomax bike in general, it's kind of sitting a little higher in the rear than normal, and the forks look a little bit softer. I'm assuming it's just to get that chassis to work kind of to his riding style, but the bike's working really good. Then Honda, kind of a typical Honda. I mean, they always look really good, nothing unpredictable. But it feels like they're fighting front end issues this year, kind of front end grip.
My theory on front end grip, and it might be right or wrong, but from my experience of riding, a bike that is a front end steer heavy bike, which I think both Kenny and Sexton use the front of the motorcycle to steer. I don't think they're rear steer guys typically, is that they're great until they're not. A front end steer bike, it gives you all this confidence when the front end is gripping and when it's planted to the ground, and then all of a sudden you lose grip and you didn't expect it, and it just tosses you and you eat it. And that's what we've seen certainly with Sexton 2 years in a row now. What he had was an interesting issue at A1 when he was trying to chase down Kenny. I watched it in slow-mo, and he hits those bumps, upsets the chassis, but what was weird was how it recovered, where he got the swaps up the berm, and luckily it was a minor crash, but that could have been a big crash. But it's weird, as Kenny doesn't have those crashes, but it seems like he's not willing to push it to the level of those crashes.
Yeah, so for those two guys on the Hondas, backgrounds, even on both of them, Sexton's rode Hondas forever, so he's pretty used to how a Honda turns. And then, even Kenny, he grew up on Suzuki's, which those are very front end turning bikes. So he's always been on a bike like that. But I feel like Roxon can adapt a little bit quicker. Like he knows when to not push the front, not to charge a corner too hard when it gets a little, more slick, like Minneapolis was.
Right.
It might be one of the slickest tracks we've had this year.
It really did look slick, for sure. There was 22 riders on the track. The 23 goes down, and it was the 23rd man on the track that took him down, which was the track. That track played a massive role in how the track developed, on how the riders had to evolve throughout the night. It was definitely one of those nights where those ruts got tighter and tighter and tighter down the corner. But because the dirt turned into being so slick, it was really challenging to get pivoted, turned early, and find front end traction exiting that corner because you were arcing so tight.
Yeah, the ruts they ended sooner. I feel like the ruts didn't continue all the way out of the exits, kind of into the straight before the jumps. They were kind of quick, and then it went to real flat, hard slick afterwards, and then there were some ruts throughout the jumps. So it was very technical in that aspect,
So moving on from what we see with the Hondas there, it's interesting. Those two guys clearly the bikes are capable of competing up front, but maybe they're fighting a little bit of confidence issues in-house. What did you see in the KTM group of bikes? I'm going to lump all of them together. Granted, Barsha is on the older quote-unquote bike, and then we have basically everyone else, Husky and KTM, racing the new 23 model bike, which was 22.5 factory edition. What do you see with those bikes? I think we're kind of on alignment here. We talked off air a little bit. What did you see with those motorcycles?
On the KTMs in general, the rears look really low this year. Like they're kind of having to adjust, I guess, for this new chassis design, but they look real low in the rear, especially going through the whoops, almost to where they're like bouncing off the bumper in the shock.
I agree with that. It feels like the rear's bound up, like it doesn't, it's not active.
Yeah, and I guess it's making the forks look really stiff as well going through the whoops. But
I totally agree with that. Yep.
In general, on the rest of the track, it looks like pretty typical KTM. Marvin, surprisingly, is probably the best KTM guy through the whoops, better than Cooper. And
yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah, and he hasn't been a good whoop guy. But on the whole KTM platform, obviously Malcolm, he's the best on the Husky. And then, Barsha's on the older gas, and he's still kind of same Barsha, third to fifth guy.
Yeah, people want to hate on this comment when I said it last year, but Barsha was an awesome guy on the Yamaha. He was competing up front, but he was realistically a third to eighth, a third to fifth guy is what I call him. He had a race win on the Yamaha, and then he moved over to KTM, and everybody said he looked better. Wow, it's a new Barcia. Go look at his results. Other than the fact that, it was COVID year and they went to Salt Lake, he was terrible in Salt Lake, but he probably already nailed in the season at that point. He was the exact same rider. And I just see the same thing this year. He looks comfortable. He doesn't, this is interesting about Barcia. Yep. He hangs it out. He really does, but he doesn't crash. I can't think of a time when I've seen him crash.
He's kind of the modern day Bob Hanna, I guess.
Right? He's a beast on the bike. He really can hang it out, get loose, but at the same time, he just does not seem to throw races away. It's a very strong skill set of his, considering that what we think of Barcia as a crazy balls rider, not necessarily really what the reality is with him on the motorcycle. I would say if you put him on any motorcycle, it could be good or bad. He's going to get the most out of it without crashing.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so do you see a big improvement or difference between the new bike and his bike, Barcia's bike?
Not so much. So, that kind of leads me to believe that they're still fighting setup. I feel like they're so used to how the older frames, reacted and handled that they haven't wrapped their minds around the new frames yet.
Do you think that they found big improvements this week? Because that's what Webb and a couple of people said post-race, thanks to the team, hard work. Or the track was a lot tighter this week, much tighter than we've seen so far. And I felt like that maybe it more accurately represented what they've been riding on in the offseason.
Yeah, that could be true. That their bikes are a little more suited for the hard back and hard, slick and stuff. It's usually where the KTM seem to excel with the steel frame.
Right.
So maybe, it was more towards their bike style, but I guess, come next week and we'll see for sure. Changes they've made have been better or worse.
It's interesting to me. We have if you go look at the design of a KTM and a Honda, Yamaha, or Kawasaki, and you just compare swing arms, right? The width of the swing arm from horizontally, left to right, on all of the Japanese bikes is far wider, and they're far beefier than a KTM group swing arm. There's no doubt in my mind, and we could easily measure this here, but that the Japanese versions are stiffer. You would think that would provide incredible stability for like a Honda, right? And that the steel frame of the KTM group bikes would be a little flexier. And then on top of that, because the swing arm's a little flexier, that we would see more flex, which would be less stability. But I don't think that's the case, at least from what it sounds like the Honda group riders are fighting. It seems like the KTM at least is predictable, and the Honda seems to be a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah. And then, kind of going with that too, that are the Honda guys just kind of fighting themselves? Are they not gelling with the team? Is the team kind of went the wrong direction? Are the riders, just trying to nitpick the bike, or is it just the bike's bad, or is it good?
Right. That's a great point. Something that we had talked about, and when unfortunately we had to take this all over again. So we had talked about the fact that nowadays the recipe for success seems to be, or not the recipe for success, but what people think is the recipe for success is to go their own way. Kenny doesn't train with Chase. I actually was out at Tyler Rattray's this year, where Chase Sexton trains and rides, and he does not train and ride with Ken Roczen, and he does not train and ride with Jet Lawrence, and Ken Roczen does not train with Jet Lawrence or Hunter. They're all in their own groups. The Honda group boys are separate. And you really look at what Star Racing's doing, at what the old pro circuit model was, and what we've historically seen with KTM at Alden's. You had brought this up earlier. It seems like the real formula to success on paper is to put your team together and let everybody battle it out even on practice day.
Yeah, they're going to have more opportunity to test parts, and also you can test a part back-to-back with different guys and different riding styles. And, that really tells you what that part's doing, or what the rider feels. With the Honda, they're definitely separated. They don't ride as much together as probably the Star Boys. I feel like even KTM's like that now. And just a few years ago, KTM was, all out and they kept everybody together. And that's kind of why they were so good. They were always top 5.
Yeah, always.
All the riders.
Yeah.
So I feel like, the teams need to start realizing that and kind of go back to their, old motto of just keeping everything in-house and tighten it and doing a lot more testing.
This is not something people want to hear, but I think it's something that they need to hear. And if you're a dad or you're a mom or you're a fan or you're trying to get the best performance out of somebody, it's been proven time and over again that the best coaching is the harshest coaching. Usually a great coach is not somebody that people really like. A great coach is somebody that gets the most out of an athlete. And sometimes to get the most out of an athlete, you have to walk the line of pushing their buttons and getting them hyped up and adrenaline up, but not over the line where they're emotionally too invested. I think Alden does that. I think he manages to push the right buttons. He manages to challenge you, and he may not be a riding coach, but the reality is you don't have to be a riding coach to see when somebody's not doing something well. So I agree with you. I think the teams might need to reconsider doing what, and it's funny, here's Star Racing Yamaha with tremendous levels of success, and what are they doing? They're in-housing everything. They've brought the team together, the old guard, the new guard, all under one roof, development program under one roof, motors, suspension, chassis. They have a facility under one roof. Everything is going the way that it always, essentially was in California. You used to go to PC, ride all off season in California, stay in California, maybe under Mitch's thumb the whole time. The stories were endless about how he could really motivate and push his riders. We've now seen a Mitch who is a little bit less gnarly. Everybody has said that. And as a byproduct, they've been less successful. And now, granted, they're still a powerhouse, but not what they were. Keeping the thought on 450s, we haven't touched on the Kawasaki. I feel like, and you and I have talked about this, it's the best bike in the class. But what is it that makes it the best bike in the class? What are you seeing with that motorcycle to you that makes it look so good?
Mainly for me is just traction. It's the bike just works good. It never seems to lose traction. Like, it doesn't do anything unpredictable as of lately. We had years where Tomac washed the front many times, but that could have been just a byproduct to him, not really knowing the chassis, but they seem to know the chassis pretty well now. The settings they got with Anderson, they got Brock Tickle. I'm going to say he's probably a pretty good test rider just based on what you see with the race bike.
He must be, right?
Because AC's bike and Anderson's bike, they're very good. They work.
Why is Tickle not racing? I would love to see him out there.
Yeah, maybe he'll fill in. I know he had an off-season injury, so I don't know how 100% he is, but yeah, it'd be cool to see him out there.
From what I'm hearing, AC's out. He had knee surgery. He said that on the broadcast that he was on. Shout out to Moto Memes for probably one of the best memes, which was Carmichael sweating bullets over AC being talented at announcing. But yeah, I agree. They have crazy good traction on corner exit. If you watch the logos on those tires, there's the front and the rear spin at the same time. And you watch a lot of the other bikes and the rear kind of overpaces the front. I'm involved in electronics just on the consumer side. We do a lot of ECUs, and we do have technologies and techniques that are around to try and do that. However, without a doubt, at the factory level, that's going to be ratcheted up. And frankly, I think Kawasaki must be leading the way right now from what I see in that department. That bike just always drives forward.
Yeah, and they were, it's the same chassis since 19. Essentially the same bike, just minor clutch changes and probably a little bit of mapping stuff for the OEM bike. So they've had plenty of years to develop it, get that chassis right, get the settings right. And, maybe Honda, KTM, Yamaha seems to be good. That bike hasn't changed much. You can go with the Suzuki too. That's been the same bike for a couple years now. So those bikes that haven't changed currently are the ones that seem to be working the best.
Yeah, there's an interesting aspect of R&D that really sucks for the aftermarket. And myself as a shop, this kills me, is bikes are constantly being changed to be all new for sales. Honda does this like clockwork. Every 3 to 4 years, out comes a new motorcycle. And it's a must do from a sales perspective. Just look at the failure of Suzuki as a company. But the reality was that Suzuki was a winning platform for a long time. And unfortunately, because they didn't update that sales channel, because it wasn't a new looking bike, even though it was very modern in plastic and design, minus an electric start, nobody bought it. Despite the fact that they were winning endlessly on that motorcycle, it just did not sell because it wasn't new. Go look at the magazine reviews every single year. It seems like they're most guilty on all new equipment when they rank it first than they are to say, you know what, this old platform's still really good. A great example you mentioned, though, the Yamaha has not changed very much since 2014. It has gone through iterations, but we continue to work on them, and there's not that much change. In my opinion, the biggest change on the Yamaha has been public perception.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of changing, with Cowie now. I feel like people are starting to realize that it's a pretty good bike. I believe it was Bike of the Year in 2019 when it came out. So, and the bike hadn't changed, but it wasn't Bike of the Year for a couple of years. Now it's Bike of the Year again. So,
right. Yeah, it's amazing how the factory edition has different suspension, pipe, mapping, whatever, right? But the difference between it and a stock bike might be 10% in any category, and actually not even close to 10% in the engine and power department. It'd probably be 1 or 2%. So it's amazing that that bike can outshine in the Works Edition reviews and to come out on top with just a minimal amount of changes, right?
Yep.
But in the production testing, like the regular shootouts, I think it was placed 4th, 5th, it was way back in the pack, essentially the same motorcycle. So I think you're right. The winning in pro racing does have an impact on the media's influence on a motorcycle.
Yeah, 100%.
Do
100%.
you think that we talked about what is Honda going to have to do to get rid of the Curse of Carmichael? I mean, they've got arguably 2 of the most talented riders in class. They went out really heavily and got Kenny Roxon. It looked like their rookie year, he was going to be just killing everybody, crashed out, gets hurt. We all know the story. He has not been able to conquer Supercross since then. He hasn't won a championship since then. That is what Honda is chasing. They've been chasing that since Carmichael left. They've really invested heavily. They've opened up the checkbook. They've built all new motorcycles. This new Honda looks like a KTM, side panels, graphic, the ergonomics of that bike look more KTM-esque. Went back to the single pipe. I mean, they've really refocused their efforts in racing from what I've heard, and yet somehow they cannot seem to win. What is that program going to have to do? And I think we touched on it earlier about maybe conglomerating, coming back together.
Yep, kind of bringing everything back in-house. I mean, if you go to like the older 250 side, when it was Geico, they did a lot of stuff in-house. Everything was really tight-knit. All the riders rode together, and they had good success on those bikes. The 450 program, I believe, needs to do that. They need to kind of follow in KTM's footsteps the last couple of years and just kind of bring everything in-house, like tell the riders like, hey, this is what we're doing, get on the program or not. And I feel like, they'll have a lot more, or a lot better results and kind of get where they need to go. But the Curse of Carmichael, I don't know, man. It's hard to get past that.
It's clearly alive and well. They have not been able to overcome it. It's interesting. They had Kenny, and then as we transition the show a little bit to the 250s, they're going to have Jet, Hunter, and then Chance Hymas as their top amateur. They've really reached down and are trying to get what are considered to be elite level talents to try and lift this Curse. We'll see what happens. Anything else worth touching on? Malcolm Stewart, he lost the front end off the triple, but that was the best Malcolm we have seen all year long.
Yeah, 100%. They weren't dropping him. He was there in the race the whole time up until that point. Just kind of a bad move on his part. He just jumped a little off to the line and just kind of lost the front. I feel like
on that topic, he landed just outside the main line.
I mean, he was like
in the cushion, in the dirt cushion, but underneath that dirt that had been pushed up from the main line was rock hard dirt. I don't think there was anything that it was just a mistake of inches realistically.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what it what it takes every night, is just those couple inches of where you're at on the track that make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. So you had mentioned a long time ago in one of our discussions that the lack of competition in tires is probably hindering our sport in a way. We're seeing a lot of pushing or washing of the front ends as crashes nowadays. I think more so than we've ever seen. And we're seeing bikes dance around in loops more so than we've ever seen. Chad Reed's on record saying that he thinks it's tire related. He thought the Bridgestones were just incredible through the loops. That may or may not be true. We have to imagine that the modern chassis is better than it's ever been before. We have to think. We don't know, but we have to imagine. Maybe you're onto something about saying that maybe it'd be, not better. Well, it would be better for the sport, but because we've just basically handed off all tires to Dunlop.
Everything's Dunlop.
Why would Dunlop even be incentivized to chase any performance? Everybody's on them. That's a question I have.
Yeah, that's maybe that's kind of hindered their tire development. They all run spec tires. I'm not in that world. I don't know when the last time that spec has changed or, the patterns they're running and stuff like that. Like who's really doing that testing and, what kind of rider. And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, if you don't have a rider that's riding as good as, Tomac or Sexton or somebody like that that's really testing and pushing the limits, I mean, how do you know how good your tire is going to be when it comes race night?
I agree entirely with that. Interestingly enough, in like F1 or other industries, when they have oftentimes gone to a spec tire, so the field's on an equal playing field, they are developing and testing all year long with premier teams. I think your point is very valid here, is that do they really have anybody who's capable of pushing these tires in R&D to the level that these top guys are? And the answer to that is no, unless they're using these top guys. And these top guys don't like to test. They're not getting paid by Dunlop to develop a tire for them. No. So it'd be interesting if we had more competition in that department. The other thing that I've noticed in tire patterns, it's very interesting. It completely transitions down to amateurs, and I personally think it's the wrong way to go. All the amateurs are always chasing the most grip possible, so where everybody's running the soft terrain version of the tire offerings. And in the pro level, they're always running the soft terrain tire version for pro racing.
Yeah.
But when soft terrain tires lose grip, they go like this, because you have a lot of grip, you find the absolute limit of the tire, and it like flexes, folds, boom, let's go, and you crash. Whereas if you took a tire that's a little bit more of an all-around tire, more of a middle ground tire, that loses traction a little bit earlier, but does so in a predictable method, a lot like how road race tires are, where there's a completely predictable slide profile to it, maybe we wouldn't see so many crashes. And it might be worth considering for these guys that I know they test and they look at lap times, but if you were to give up 100th a lap but not crash by going to a slightly less grippy tire, maybe that would be worth it for these guys. I don't know. It's interesting that our sport has literally taken a soft terrain tire and adapted it to literally every single track.
Yeah, I'd like to see what those guys' tires look like after that night.
I bet you they're missing
run the soft tires on that hard terrain. I mean,
yeah.
Sure. Missing a lot of knobbies.
And that's a great point about Sexton, because we have seen in the past on some media outlets that after a hard packed night like that, the front knobbies will go, they'll fall off. It's possible he just lost his tire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very well possible.
I've heard that the casings on those are quite a bit different than production, and the durometer and all that stuff, to the point where after a main event, which is only 22 minutes or whatever it is, they are completely trash. So possibly that cost him that race, or just the fact that tire had been completely used up and he just hadn't quite adjusted to that yet.
Yeah, it's 100% possible.
Well, moving forward, we got Arlington, Dallas coming up in the 450 class. Who do you have moving in? Who do you have for this Triple Crown weekend, which is going to be really exciting? We'll talk about the 250s in a minute. But who do you have moving forward this weekend? Who do you got? Who's your guy?
I guess let's start top three. Third place. I'm going to put Cooper Webb in there.
Okay, third.
I'll put him around third. We're going to see how he can do, with 3 races. I feel like he's got a little more confidence after this last weekend. But I'll put him third. He usually typically rides pretty good in Dallas.
He does, and they got great dirt in Dallas. It's one of the best, and he's had a storied history there. He's got to be going in there with a good mentality, chasing down Kenny, passing him on the last lap. I mean, Webb has had some pretty awesome rides there in the Dallas Stadium.
Yeah, so I'll put him third. Second place, that's going to be a tough one. I'm probably going to put Anderson second.
So you think that all these riders can handle all that smoke? I got Anderson winning this race.
Yeah, I'm going to put Anderson second. I feel like he's kind of seeing that he just needs to stay at the top 3 and not really push it. I'll put him second. He's usually pretty good in Texas as well. First place, I'm going to go back out on a limb and throw Tomek back in there just because of his last Triple Crown race.
Right.
I mean, even this last weekend, he went down in the start. He was dead last. He came back to 6th for a salvage ride for Tomek. That's pretty good, because usually once he falls down, he kind of falls apart in the past.
Point. Historically,
he's always fell down and then fell down again, and he just rushed himself.
That's a great point. That was the best he's ever been after some adversity.
Yeah, he didn't seem rushed this weekend, and looked very comfortable. Like I said, I think they got that bike pretty dialed for him now.
Yeah, I think he's really happy. He definitely has the softest forks I've seen in pro racing. He definitely has the tallest rear end of the bike out there, but his bike seems to be working extremely well for him. And as we go east and we see a lot more of that chatter, I recall Dallas having a lot of acceleration chop the last time we were there, exiting these corners. That type of setup is going to be much better. An active rear, an active front. It's going to soak up those bumps and give him that early drive out of a turn that will allow him to ride late. I think what they have figured out with Tomek this year is a bike that works throughout the main event, as opposed to a bike that works in qualifying and fast laps. Even though he's doing both, the bike really looks dialed in for the main event. Yeah. So Dylan Ferranis is the practice bike hero. Okay, practice track hero. He's incredible in practice, setting fast laps, looks good. hasn't shown up in the main events yet. He's had some fast rides, but started from behind. This weekend, he was just off the pace in the main. I call him Dylan Fernandez come main event because it's a totally different guy.
Yeah, I think with the track being so slick this weekend, and he's pretty aggro on the gas, on the brakes. He's a very active rider, which works well outdoors because he has a lot of time to make up mistakes and he can hang it out. And I feel like with the track being that slick and that hard, he couldn't get the bike to work. He's overworking the bike is what he's doing.
Yeah. And it seems like every once in a while he'll squirt out a fast lap. Everything goes well. But to do that lap after lap after lap, this does not seem to be clicking for him. But I think that pretty much sums up the 450 class. We play fantasy, or I play fantasy, and I picked Vince Freeze. Even those qualifying times weren't that great, I just knew that old Vincey boy was going to rip some good starts and put it in the main event. So in honor of Vince Freeze, we got to take a shot.
Shots for Vinny.
Shots for whole shots. He got one this weekend. Maybe next weekend he can get two, and we'll have to do 2 shots. And then we'll move on to the 250 class. So cheers.
Cheers.
So good once it hits your lips.
With that, we should get to the 250s now, huh?
Let's move on to the 250s. So who was the most impressive rider for you in the 250 class, if it's a surprise, or anybody who did surprise you?
Surprised me. I mean, the guy that surprised me, I guess, would be Phil Nicoletti. Even though he wasn't, top 3, top 5, whatever. I mean, he came out swinging in that heat race. And I feel like once we kind of get a little more east, he's going to be better, being at club and the tracks they ride and the style of dirt and stuff. I feel like east, he's going to be really good if he was that far ahead or, where he was.
You hit on a point there, and it wasn't even on my radar until you mentioned the name, and then instantly I think you're correct. He was probably the most impressive guy that I didn't expect to do so well. That was a really good ride for Phil, and despite a little bit of adversity out there, not only did he get slammed by Faulkner in the heat race, but in the main event, old Jordan Smith, and that was like a crazy situation. And Nicoletti's just in his lane, and here comes this freaking Honda that just taking him out. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Nicoletti for me is going to be my Vince Freeze of the East Coast in the 250 class.
Okay, I got you. So like the older veteran who's going to be better than people expect. He didn't ride overly aggressive out there. He really just rode his own race. I think it was round 1. He just wanted to stay in his lane and get the round over with.
Yep, 100%.
I was really impressed with the Honda boys. I don't know if there's special support from Honda this year. I don't know if contingencies are way better this year. We need to do a little research on that, be more prepared for the show. But essentially, there was like 15 main event capable Hondas who showed up at this race. I was shocked. I mean, outside of the factory effort, we had the SGB Honda team. I think there was 2 guys on that team, maybe 3. We had the Phoenix Racing team, which has 3 guys, and Peters looked incredible in that.
Looked really good, especially coming up
the heat race. Yeah. Cullen Park rookie made a main. We had the other Phoenix Honda guy, Cody Schock, made a main by the skin of his teeth. I'm hopeful for him to come out hard this year and to come out strong this year. But the 250 class is a different animal than the 450 class for sure.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then there was a couple other just random Hondas. Like we have a Texan, John Short, who he didn't make the main, but he's definitely capable of doing it. And then there was just a AJ Canizero, who was a little bit out, but his qualifying times looked very promising. I actually think with a little more fitness, he probably will be putting a couple main events together.
Yeah, we got the Firepower team.
Yes, I totally forgot. Excuse me.
Smith
list off the riders on that team. I think there's 3 there too.
Yep.
Jordan Smith.
Jared Fry.
Jared Fry. There's one more.
Not sure on the other guy.
Yeah, but one more.
We had Moto Concepts. We had Oldenburg.
Oldenburg did not make the main event. That is the story of the night. I had some internal words. I won't comment, but I had heard he was going insanely fast on the practice track. He did squirt out to a top time in qualifying early on. He didn't put one in late, but early on he did.
He was in that top second.
And it's interesting because we don't know what happened with the bike, but possibly his practice time suffered because maybe his bike was starting to have an issue way through practice. We don't know. Shows up to the heat race, bike doesn't start. And then I think he got a last gate pick for the LCQ way on the outside. And just, in that short amount of time with a bad start, you just can't make it happen. That was a big story for the night, was Oldenburg not making the main.
Yeah. No joke.
You know that Tony's got to be over there just pounding sand, pissed off, because this was their year in that class. I mean, they really had a plan together to go get Vince, to go get Oldenburg, who's a top level guy, put together a really good bike. They put a lot of money into it. They've really invested heavily in it. And then high hopes for East Coast. Oldenburg's making 450 mains and D-in-Qs coming in to this. He'll be really good come Dallas. He's a Texas boy. He's going to be out for a vengeance, I guarantee.
Yeah, he's definitely got talent. Yeah, it'll be a home race for him. I feel like he'll probably come out swinging. He'll be a top 5 guy this weekend.
Certainly. Well, let's move to the front of the pack. So we had, in order, Jet Lawrence, Austin Faulkner, Cameron McAdoo, RJ Hampshire. I think it was Pierce Brown in 5th, and
J Martin 5th.
J Mart 4th. Yep, J Mart 4th, Pierce Brown. No, RJ 5th, right? I got it right here.
Jet Lawrence, Faulkner, McAdoo, J Mart,
RJ, Pierce Brown 6, right?
Pierce, yeah.
So essentially, that is the factory offerings, and we're only missing one color, which is the KTM. And Max Volan crashed out, got hurt, probably done for the season, right?
Yeah, he looked a little beat up, kind of looked like he was leaning towards his shoulder.
Right. Yeah. So we basically have the top 6 represented by the top 6 guys, as chosen by factory teams. That was interesting to me. Now, Jordan Smith, we didn't really talk on him other than his instance with Phil Nicoletti, but he really is the most intriguing rider out there who could really mix it up and throw a wrench in this factory program. Yep. He definitely can have the speed. He's usually a good starter. I'd have to imagine he's fit. I mean, he's like 6th year or whatever. If he trains at MTF, and I don't know if he's in like actual MTF or just using the facilities, but you'd have to think with all the years of knowledge over there, he would be fit. New bike, new program, new team, that's a little bit different getting used to, but he scored it out to an awesome start and a great heat race ride. Darn near won the thing.
Yeah, he could be the underdog that maybe throws a wrench in the program and kind of comes out with a win here or there. I mean, he's a great rider. If he can keep it off the ground and not make the dumb mistakes and jump on tough blocks, he'll be up there.
Yeah. So, did you see anything bike-wise? Did any bike look spectacular to you in that class? Did anything look special? Did chassis? What was interesting to me is we talked so much about it in 450, and it's almost a non-story in 250s.
Yeah, I think just the weight difference and kind of how the bikes react. They don't have the horsepower or torque to kind of disrupt the chassis as fast. So all the bikes look good. I mean, Cowie surprised me this coast. Faulkner to be in 2nd. I kind of had him maybe around 5th this first race. So, I mean, that's good for him. And the same thing for McAdoo. I mean, he didn't crash.
He didn't crash. That I hate to say that, that's the title of the night. You could just put he didn't crash and everybody would know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see kind of this Triple Crown. I mean, 2nd race of the East Coast, they're going to a Triple Crown already. I feel like there's going to be some pretty good battles, and we might see some more of those crashes,
dude. Because 2nd round in, nobody's established themselves yet. They still got the jitters. We still got some people who probably feel like they should have qualified who didn't qualify. Now you have to send it in practice because you got to get in right away. And here's an interesting thought. This week it went C, B, A, and the track deteriorated. A guys definitely had a slower racetrack than the C or B guys. I think they're going to flip that around and it's going to go A, B, C this weekend because that's how Feld does it. They switch every week to be fair. But maybe you have some insight into what you think Feld's actually doing.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I mean, I feel like they probably have it kind of planned with the schedule, especially on the Triple Crown stuff. You give a good track to some C class guys or B class guys, and there might be more of them than the A guys come night race. So I feel like they definitely think about that when they're making the schedule.
For sure. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be a really interesting weekend. We're actually going to be at Arlington. Come check us out. Come find us. We're going to be in one of the suites having a good time. Hopefully Vinny gets a couple more hole shots and we can continue the good time. So I think that who do you got out of the 250 class moving forward for this weekend? Who do you think can get 3 good starts, 3 no crashes, 3 consistent main events and come away with his victory?
For this weekend, man, I could see Hampshire getting a win for a moto. I could see Smith getting a win for a moto, and even Faulkner. But I mean, yeah, you can't put out Jet. I mean, he's just so solid and so smooth, and just he looked really comfortable this weekend. He didn't look like he was trying at all.
Yeah, it's a great point. We hadn't even talked about Jet yet. He dominated. That's why we didn't talk about him. He made it look easy. Jet Lawrence makes things look easy. He really is the wonder kid. I think he's 18 this year, maybe 19, but I still think he's 18. Yeah. Unbelievable talent. Something we can talk about on technique for you guys who are at home watching, who would like to improve yourselves at riding. You're really good at this. This is something Anderson does in 450s that I wanted to bring up, and then we'll talk about Jet and some interesting things he does. So there's a couple of ways you can position your body when you corner. If your motorcycle's here, this is you. Jet rides like this. Everything stays in line with each other. If his arms are out, his arms stay in line with the bike. He never does this. Something that a lot of amateurs do, something a lot of weekend warriors do, is every time you're turning, you're always, if the bike leans in, you lean out. You're staying level with gravity and not level with the bike. Jet is incredible at staying in line, and that's what makes his riding look effortless and smooth and quiet on the bike. He's just always in line with it. Anderson does something that's even a level beyond, in my opinion, that comes from road racing, comes from flat track, and the physics are easy to understand. You're really good at this. So when you're cornering, you can either arc and pivot, so it can get like a lean, the front end grips, the back end grips, and you turn. Or you can put weight on the inside peg and force the rear tire around, but the bike stays more vertical, and your actual body weight goes inside the motorcycle. So you do this, the bike turns, and it stays more upright, and it helps you get more traction. That was some skills that you've always had in your career, being able to pitch the rear of the motorcycle around. And I noticed Anderson doing it a lot of times, exiting those tight berms that we were talking about that had no rut. He was able to drop his shoulder down and in if it was a left-hander and keep the bike more upright so that the more of the tire knobby was grabbing traction. A good way you can test this at home is if you ride your bicycle, try to go straight and lean the bicycle over. If you do that, you will go outside the bike, your weight will counterbalance. Now try to turn the bicycle while keeping the bicycle upright. Your weight will go inside the bicycle while the bicycle stays upright. That's kind of the science and physics of it. The center of gravity has to line up. So what is it that Jet, in your opinion, does better than the field technique-wise? And why is it that he can do this? I mean, we could go off for hours on this in American amateur racing, but what is Jet doing so well, and why can he do it at such a young age?
He's learned technique at a young age and stuck with it. The Euro guys seem to have that figured out. They're very smooth, very easy on the throttle, very easy on the brakes. They don't do anything flashy. I mean, it's kind of changed the last couple of years. But just smooth. You don't disrupt the chassis. It doesn't do anything weird. You're riding the bike. Everything flows very, very well. Yeah. So he just stays very neutral on the bike. Doesn't do anything wild. Doesn't do anything crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. He can throw it down and throw some big whips and make it look good for the crowd. But just when it comes race day, he just knows how to ride the bike, and he doesn't push it. Doesn't get worried about the competition. He just stays very smooth.
I'd say it was shocking how fast he made that move to the front. He did it like that.
Yeah, he did it quicker than I expected, for sure. But he did it in a very smart way. He didn't ride Faulkner high. Didn't push didn't try to push the front or try to pinch him off or anything crazy. He just came in hot, got under him, and just made the pass, and then it was over after that.
Yeah, I think after he did that, he saw that he had the pace. He's got his little bit of cushion he needed. And then I think he just maintained cushion the rest of the race. As the track broke down, he just rode smooth, rode smart, and managed that race from the front. Sometimes that's hard to do if you're not faster, but he was probably clearly faster that night and was able to just keep that gap as he needed on demand. That was interesting. So yeah, he's going to be hard to beat for Triple Crown for sure. But Jet has a hard time doing what he did, keeping that speed in check. So for 3 quick main events like that, if he does not get the start, which he was not a storied starter outdoors,
yeah,
I do think with those short rate main formats that we might see, like you said, a mix up where we get a couple different winners. It's going to come down to starts because everybody's fit enough to go 10 laps in that class at this point.
Yeah, I mean, top 5, 6. Honestly, you could go back to like top 10. I feel like Kitchen could be up there this weekend too.
We didn't talk about Kitchen, so there's a rookie goes out,
top threes.
kills it in practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Brown could be up there.
Yeah, he looked good in the heat race. Very good in the heat. Won the heat. So Kitchen, what did you see with him? I mean, he was really fast in practice, looked really good, and then come main event, the wheels kind of fell off.
Yeah, I feel like the pressure got to him first main event, and he was just over jumping and just messing up timing through the rhythms, and he got way too nervous.
Yeah, I agree with
that. A little
that.
excited. Yeah.
Will J-Mart continue to improve as the series goes on?
Yeah. So J-Mart, I guess, what is the oldest guy? Nah, Nicoletti's older, but J-Mart
not by much, right? Yeah, he's older.
Yeah, yeah. So he's smart. He knew not to push too much this first race, and he's in it for the championship. But yeah. So I mean, he's been at Star. He's over the East Coast now. Knows what the dirt is like on the East Coast, so he's going to be moving forward. He could be top 3 this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting there. Dallas has had some long whoop sections in the past, kind of been a story of Dallas, but they never have, well, they have been tough at times, but a lot of times it breaks down and funnels into kind of a rut line, which in my opinion is not that good for racing. I'd rather see the whoops develop all evenly. Back in the day in practice, they would put hay bales out so that they forced riders away from the rut, right? But we don't do that anymore for whatever reason. So that's going to be the story of Dallas to me. I haven't even looked at the track map yet, but if they build a big, gnarly, long whoop section, not just gnarly whoops, but a long whoop section, that will become the separator, because in the 250 class, I really do think that is what separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And that's going to be interesting on bike setup. I know Hampshire was complaining a little bit coming into the season. And if the KTM bikes are struggling with whoops, that would be a weakness, but this weekend had a small, short whoop section that didn't play as big of a role. Actually surprised the night for me, I forgot about him, was Styles Robertson. Did not expect him to do so well. He did extremely well. No knock on the guy. He was a storied amateur. He was a top amateur, supposed to be a next level pro. And the reality is he's knocking on the door of the veterans after this weekend. So he's actually exactly where he should be. It'd be nice if he could win, but I think our sport needs to give these young guys that little bit of time. I mean, you're competing against J-Mart. You're competing against a guy who is 10 years established. Granted, Jet already winning, but he's a phenomenal generational talent for sure.
Yeah, and also to mention Jet Reynolds, the other Jet.
Oh yeah,
he threw it away on press day.
Press day, right?
Yeah,
just a rough deal for him. Rough deal for Mitch. I don't know. I mean, Jet unfortunately last couple years has had a lot of injuries his last couple years. So I think basically if you were to ask him, has he been healthier more months or hurt more months for the last 4 years? The answer would be he's been hurt more months than he's been healthy, which is really sad for him. Really, really talented amateur. Well, I think that's the majority of what I wanted to get to. So thanks for coming on the show. Anything, any parting ways, anything? We saw another good start from a Suzuki in the 250 class. They're right up there off the gate. They don't seem to have something else in the program or just the riders, although I think they have very talented riders. But they've got the ability to get the starts. So what do you think that those guys are going to have to do over there? They're kind of doing your model of a program. California, in one department, in one house, right? Everything's all kind of under one roof. They are certainly not, I don't think they're getting much salaried as the riders, maybe a little bit, but not much. But they need to find just like 3 to 4 more spots on track. If you could get in the 7 to 10 discussion consistently and occasionally challenge for a 5th, then your team's doing something, but they've just been off. Is there anything that maybe they could be looking for?
Yeah, kind of what comes to mind is I don't know if those guys have any riding coaches.
I heard Randy Lawrence is a little bit involved because it's Larry Brooks, but I don't know how involved he really is.
So I mean, yeah, if they could get somebody out there kind of pushing them and kind of critiquing them a little bit more, I mean that would move them forward for sure.
Davey Millsaps is on the Mumford program.
Okay.
But he's been their best guy too. So
yeah, true.
Yeah, maybe there is something to that. I agree with you. That's interesting. I'm really glad to see them out there. I don't know where the budget comes from. I don't know where the funding comes from. I think Suzuki's really helping out quite a bit. But definitely a great opportunity for Suzuki to put their best foot forward. The reality is the bike's still competitive. You can see it out there. They did an inside the bike on MXA or a Vital or one of those. Very stock motorcycle when it comes to parts and pieces. like stock bolts and stock hubs and stock spokes and, stock clamps, stuff like that. But obviously they put money into the motor department, they put money into the suspension department. And it's clearly competitive at the top level, just doing that. If you're a guy watching this video, you really don't need to go dump all this money in some of the things that don't really make that much of a performance difference for you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and they've had that platform to work with for a long. So
yeah,
they got to figure it out.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited to see you at Arlington. We're going to catch up. We've got a lot of things going on. So thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Good talking to you. Glad to be a part of this.
All right, man. Let's hope for some Vince Freeze hole shots.
Woo!
Woo-hoo.
Shots for.
All right, man. Cheers.